So you're thinking about switching to the next gen forehand. You've seen it on the tour. More and more players are developed using it, but is it right for you? That's what we're going to answer today. So let's start first. Like, what is the next gen forehand? Well, it's a name that was given to the crop in the last 10 years that came up with stylistic differences than what we saw with the modern forehand. So if you imagine like the Shapovalovs and some of the other players that were inverting the racket this way, that is what was coined the next gen, because it was a far different look than what we saw with the Federers and the modern forehand, where the racket is up or in the takeback. But it's been around for a long time, so the next gen isn't particularly accurate. You see, if you take a look at the looks of Sampras, Lindell, and Laver, it's been around, but we're seeing it more and more now than ever. All right, so let's talk about what the stroke mechanics that differ between the two strokes, and let's start with the modern forehand. So the modern forehand, the gold standard of forehands, because we saw probably the greatest generation of tennis players using it. When we look at the Federers, the Nadals, the Djokovic's, just to name the ATP side of it, they all have modern forehands. And what they're doing is, on the unit turn, the racket face is either slightly at an angle or all the way upright where the racket tip is up. And this is incorporated on the unit turn. Now from there, not a whole lot changes from the next gen forehand. The racket is going to lag as it drops down and it fires on the dominant side of the body. Now, players that struggle with spacing, and particularly the hip and the arm, the next gen forehand can help resolve this. The reason being is, on the next gen forehand, as the racket is taken back, what ends up happening is the elbow climbs. And so that's why you hear a lot of coaches talk about taking the racket back with the elbow. This isn't necessarily the Lindell take back to where it operated almost like a bullwhip. What we see today is the racket really inverting so that you see the strings horizontally, right? They're here, maybe slightly here, but instead of the racket being taken back to where we can see it on the side fence, now it's being taken back so you can see it from the back fence. And what this high elbow does is it helps ensure that there's proper spacing. So again, on the modern forehand, if you're having issues here, we want to make sure that we get the arm up. So it's doing this. But if that feels uncomfortable, or maybe it's just a groove that's too close to one another. And what I mean by that is, if this is what you're used to doing, this low elbow, trying to do this, the groove is just running right next to each other with very little space. You're going to end up running into the old habit. So you exaggerate it, you change it all together. And from here, you climb and you get the racket face facing back, so you get this high elbow. Now, are there advantages to the next gen forehand? With anything, if you start the racket from a higher position and it falls, you're going to gain more momentum and you're going to gain a little bit more leverage over the ball. Now, this racket starting from a higher place and then falling low to high is going to give you access to more spin. Now, it's also going to help you get a little bit more linear striking. So today what we see within a really advanced ball, the ball falls off a cliff. It doesn't move up and down like a rainbow. And so this, if you think of like the Kyrgioses, the Alcaraz, like the ball really penetrates through the court, much like you'd see with a flat forehand, but it just has a ton of spin. All right, so it might be worth examining if you're struggling with the modern forehand. Now, if you're just getting started, if you've been playing, maybe just for a few years, this probably isn't for you, okay? Because it's a bigger movement. And with the bigger movement, remember, more moving parts, the more things that can go wrong. So you don't want to suddenly be trying to make this complicated movement. But if you are a more advanced player, you've played the game for a long time, and you just consistently feel like the forehand is breaking down, primarily because either of spacing between the elbow and hip or the racket operating too big behind you, right? These swing patterns are breaking down, then the next gen may be for you, because it's going to actually be easier to keep the racket on the dominant side because of the high elbow, and make sure that there's this massive space to ensure that the contact happens well out in front. All right, so you can clearly see the differences between the two forehand styles, and they both have their advantages. But again, I'm a big fan of the modern forehand. I still teach it. I just think that the next gen works for some, and especially for players that are going to spend a lot of time developing something new, that might be for them. Just remember, with any change though, you're going to have to spend time with this. So you can't get out there and compete with this and try to have this swing thought. You never want to think about what your racket's doing behind you. You're going to have to get some reps, and I would give 2 to 3 months to incorporate this change. All right, I worked with a D1 athlete that his freshman year went from a modern forehand to next gen, and it took him anywhere from 2 to 3 months to get comfortable, but it was really almost 6 months until he was able to compete with it without him ever thinking about it again. And in the name next gen, it stuck. I think it's kind of silly because it's like now it's kind of the old gen with the new gen, but that's the name that everybody recognizes it. So whether old school or new school, get out there, give this a try. Leave your comments. Let me know how it worked. Let me know how it worked for you and what your thoughts, or if you've played with the next gen forehand or if you prefer modern. Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.